The NBA trade deadline has now officially passed. It is over, and this has been legendary. I don't know any other way to describe it. This has been an absolutely incredible trade deadline. We've seen 3 big players get moved, 5 trades that I can think of off the top of my head that are going to have a lasting impact on the franchise that that players were traded to. I think this is a huge deal. I think this is the biggest trade deadline we've had in the NBA in a very long time. In this video, I'm going to grade all of the trades from the deadline, starting with the Luka Doncic trade. I'm not going to get too deep into the Luka trade because I already made a video about that. You can go check that out. That is my raw, immediate reaction to everything that happened with Luka Doncic and the entire trade and how ridiculous I thought it was. This is one of the worst trades in the history of the NBA. I honestly still believe that. I guess time will tell if that is the case. It is franchise altering for the Lakers, franchise altering in a negative way for the Mavericks. Everything that keeps coming out about what Nico Harrison was thinking and what everything was going on in the organization and blah, whatever. Everything about it is mind blowing. It just gets worse and worse as we go through this. The logic behind what Nico was saying, I can't believe the Rob Pelinka convincing Nico that, Luka's out of shape. He's fat. He's not going to be worth more than just one protected first round pick alongside Anthony Davis. Everything that's come out about it has painted Nico in a completely insane light, big brained himself into basically giving Luka away for free, essentially. Anthony Davis, great player, but certainly not worth the Luka, certainly not just worth Luka, rather. And he's also, worth more than just one first rounder. Apparently, the original trade that Nico proposed was multiple first round picks. I believe it was 3 or 4 first round picks. I think I saw Austin Reeves was in there. Dalton Necht, I never remember how to pronounce this dude's name, was apparently one of the names that Nico wanted. He wanted a huge package alongside Anthony Davis, and somehow Rob Pelinka convinced him that Luka being out of shape was not worth all of that, which is obviously mind-blowing, obviously ridiculous for a 25-year-old perennial MVP candidate. But here we are, Nico Harrison, worst decision ever. And I guess I did talk about that longer than I wanted to. The next trade that happened was De'Aaron Fox, which I have not talked about on this channel yet. Amazing trade, specifically for the Spurs. The Spurs get De'Aaron Fox and Jordan McLaughlin. I don't want to say they're set. I don't want to be too dramatic about this, but they have De'Aaron Fox locked up long term now. They're going to lock up Wemby. That is a hell of a 2-piece combination. This is amazing. Greg Popovich, obviously, well, in my opinion, the best coach of all time. Could you ask for a better pair at the end of Popovich's career than Fox and Wemby? Fox and Wemby are the new Parker and Duncan. That's an amazing compliment. This is going to be so exciting. And they didn't have to give up too much for it. I think what the Spurs gave up was completely fair for De'Aaron Fox. The Kings end up with Zach LaVine. Great player. They get Sissoko. I don't know how to pronounce this dude's name. Sissoko. I don't know, but he was already, he was traded. Again, we'll see that later. And I think he was cut as well from the other team that he got traded to. So completely irrelevant. But the Kings did get 3 first rounders and 3 second rounders alongside Zach LaVine. I think it's a pretty decent trade for the Kings. They're still going to be a playoff team while losing their best players. So pretty impressive, I guess. Decent enough haul. They couldn't really do much. De'Aaron Fox wanted to leave. He wanted to go to the Spurs. The Kings sent him to the location that he wanted to go. I think players are going to really respect that. I think picking up 6 picks is pretty damn good for De'Aaron Fox. 3 first rounders. I don't really fault the Kings for this. I think that they did the best that they could with what they were given. Little bit awkward for the Bulls because I feel like they could have gotten a little more than just 1 first rounder for Zach LaVine. I know they've been shopping him for a really long time, but I feel like he was still worth 2 first rounders to a team. The Bulls got off the Zach LaVine contract, which they really wanted to. They got Zach Collins, Trey Jones, and Kevin Huerter. Decent players. You know, the Bulls are kind of in tank mode right now, but they did get their own first round pick back from the Spurs. That's probably exactly what they were really aiming for. That's probably why they only took 1 pick instead of getting 2 because they wanted their own pick. If I had to give it a rating out of 10 for the Bulls, I'd say it was like, you know, a 5 maybe for them. The Kings, harder to rate it for them because they were kind of put into a position they didn't want to be. Obviously, they didn't want to get rid of Fox, and they did the best that they could in the situation given what they were given. So I think I actually would give this like a 7 out of 10 for the Kings. If it was closer to the Luka situation where De'Aaron Fox wasn't trying to get out and they just randomly traded him, I would give this a much lower rating. I would give this like maybe a 4. But because De'Aaron Fox forced them into this, I think they did the best they could. So 7 out of 10 is fine. And the Spurs get a fucking 27 out of 10 as far as I'm concerned. I think this was a phenomenal move for the organization. And I think De'Aaron Fox is going to make a big difference. The next trade on the list, the Charlotte Hornets acquire a 2nd round draft pick from the Oklahoma City Thunder, and they gave them a future 2nd round draft pick. This was a nothing trade. I give this a meaningless out of 10. The next trade we're going to talk about is another Dallas trade, and another mind-boggling Dallas trade for that matter. The Mavericks acquired Caleb Martin and the Sixers 2030 2nd round pick. They traded their own 2025 2nd round pick and Quentin Grimes to the Sixers. Grimes, he struggled a bit in Dallas, and now he's starting to get his foothold there. He was starting to get it together. And then Nico Harrison just shipped him out, shipped out this young kid with a lot of potential. For Caleb Martin, he's been very mediocre this season. Like, he's been very mid at literally at best. Like, he's been pretty bad. Let's be honest. Caleb Martin has been pretty awful for the Sixers. And he's locked up for the next 3 years, I think, 3 or 4 years. I don't know what Nico's thinking. I think this was a bad deal, but good for the Sixers for getting out of the Caleb Martin contract. That was really great for them. Bad on Nico. Once again, I'll give this a 2 out of 10 for Nico and the Mavs, and probably a solid 6 or 7 for the Sixers. They did pretty good. 6 or 7 for the 76ers. Here's another pretty irrelevant trade. Daniel Tice was traded to the Thunder alongside a 2nd round pick. And the Pelicans got cash considerations. They were just trying to get off the Tice money. And Tice was already waived by the Thunder. I don't know. I guess this trade was good for the Pelicans. You give them a solid 6 for it. And the trade was probably good for the Thunder. Sam Presti gets to collect another 2nd round pick. He's collecting Infinity Stones over there. And they're all 1st and 2nd rounders. The guy's got 4,000 fucking picks. I don't know why he needed another one, but why not? If you could do it, get an extra pick. Fuck it. And then the Kings ended up getting Jonas Valanciunas. They traded City Sissoko, the guy whose name I couldn't pronounce before. They traded him and 2 future 2nd rounders for Jonas Valanciunas. Now, Valanciunas I think he's been okay this season, not super great. Still a solid acquisition for next to nothing. You just received this guy in the De'Aaron Fox trade, and you're giving away a couple 2nd round picks. It's almost like Valanciunas was part of that trade. I think this is a good one for the Kings. I think this is going to help them in their playoff push. I still don't really think that they're going to be better than a 1st round knockout. But you know what? The Kings had a long history of failures and not making the playoffs. So it's really nice that they're still trying to contend despite the De'Aaron Fox situation. I give the Kings, a solid 8 or 9 on this one. I think it's good. I don't think it's going to have any long-term impact, but I think it's smart. And I think this is really smart for the Wizards. And this is the first trade that we're seeing the Wizards make. And I'm going to tell you something right now, folks. The Wizards make some good deals here at the deadline. The next trade, Jaden Springer gets traded to the Rockets. He gets traded alongside a second rounder. This was strictly a salary dump trade. And here we go. Now we're talking about the Wizards again. And the Wizards make a sort of big trade. Like, this is nothing to really scoff at. We have basically a Kyle Kuzma, Chris Middleton swap. The Bucks got Kyle Kuzma, Patrick Baldwin Jr., Jericho Sims from the Knicks, and a 2025 second round pick. And the Wizards get Chris Middleton, AJ Johnson, and a 2028 first round pick swap. The Knicks received DeLon Wright in cash considerations. They basically just wanted to get rid of Jericho Sims. They picked up another guard. The Knicks went from having no real centers to sort of Mitch is coming back. They have Precious Achua, Huck Porty's really stepping up. Obviously, they have Cat. So they suddenly had some center depth. Finally, we're blessed with not having to watch Jericho Sims play anymore. But the Wizards made a really, really solid deal. They got off the Kyle Kuzma contract. They get Chris Middleton, who is struggling. Chris Middleton is not the same player that he was a couple years ago when he was an all-star. Hopefully, a change of scenery really helps him. He's not going to have as much pressure on him. And most importantly, he could sort of lead the Wizards and teach the young guys the game of basketball. I really honestly think this is a great deal for them. They got a first round pick swap. They gave away Kyle Kuzma, not part of Washington's long-term plans, but these are guys that are going to help the Bucks contend right now, which obviously the Bucks contention window is going to be closing soon because Damian Lillard's getting older. Giannis is getting older, but he's still in his prime. I think this was a great deal for both teams. I think this was a phenomenal trade. I really think the Wizards are moving in the right direction. They're starting to rebuild right, and I'm looking forward to seeing what the Wizards are going to be like in the future. And the Bucks don't get talked about a lot, but this is a really good deal to help them. You got to always fear Giannis in the playoffs, especially with Lillard. Giannis already has that ring. Lillard is clutch. He is an Iceman in the playoffs. The next trade is another pretty irrelevant one. We got KJ Martin and 2 second round picks going to the Pistons. The Sixers were just trying to free up salary. Now we're talking about our third big name trade. And it is, of course, the news that broke last night. Jimmy Butler is officially a Golden State Warrior. This is a complicated trade to evaluate. If I was an NBA GM, would never want Jimmy Butler. After all the bullshit that he's done, I would not want anything to do with him. To stack on top of that, you're putting Butler on a team with Draymond fucking Green. Okay? 2 of the most toxic players in the NBA, but also 2 of the most winningest players in the NBA. But Jimmy Butler's old now, and Jimmy Butler's not the same player. So it's a really interesting move that the Warriors were trying to get Jimmy Butler. I completely understand why. I know that their championship contending window is closing. I know they wanted to get a big time star to help propel them to the next level again, but I can't help but think this is either going to go really, really well or be an absolute and utter nightmare, which I feel like is probably the more likely scenario. Obviously, we're not going to know until it all happens, but this is quite a move by the Warriors. And I get it. You got Steve Kerr as the coach. If anybody can control and rein in his ego, probably Steve Kerr. But I probably also would have said that about Eric Spoelstra. And Pat Riley. And we saw what happened there. The Warriors also gave him an extension immediately. And that was the thing that shocked me the most. It's not that big a deal, I guess, but they're going to have Jimmy for another 2 years for 50 something million each year. Wild. I would never pay Jimmy that, not at 36 or whatever he is. It's insane. The Heat get Andrew Wiggins, Kyle Anderson, PJ Tucker, and 1 first-round draft pick. Probably the best the Heat could do. And I think they did a pretty damn good job. You got Andrew Wiggins. He's got a ring. He helped lead the Warriors to a championship. He hasn't been the same player since that year, but you know, he's good. Kyle Anderson, very, very good player. The Heat are still going to be a pretty good team. I mean, they're in the playoff picture right now. Jimmy barely played this year. He really wasn't there. Like it was the young guys taking over reins from Butler. I think this is a great deal for the Heat, especially since they didn't really have a choice because of all the commotion that Jimmy Butler is causing. I think this worked out for the Heat big time. Given the circumstances, I think you give this like an 8 or a 9 out of 10 for the Heat. I think they did the best that they could, given Jimmy running to the media every 15 minutes, complaining and crying about everything. The Warriors getting Jimmy, I don't know. I'm not willing to give this like a good rating. I will say I could be eating crow later on. Like this might work out for the Warriors. If there's any organization that can make this work, it is them. All in all, I would give them this a 2 out of 10 right now. I could look like a fool later on if this really works out. Another pretty damn big trade, in my opinion. We have the Raptors acquiring Brandon Ingram. The Pelicans receive Bruce Brown, Kelly Olynyk, a first-round pick and a second-round pick. The Raptors got Brandon Ingram. You wouldn't expect that. The Raptors are on the rebuild, and Brandon Ingram, obviously a pretty established guy in the NBA. He didn't necessarily become the star that people were hoping he would, but very, very solid ball player. Brandon Ingram's going to be a free agent. It's a little bit of a confusing move in that sense. I think Brandon Ingram's a great addition to this team. I think he can really help with young guys. His contract does come up at the end of the year, so a little odd for the Raptors, unless they know that they're going to be able to extend Brandon Ingram, in which case he's a really solid piece for them. I think that's a great deal in that situation if they know that in the offseason they'll be able to extend him. If not, weird deal. Very, very awkward deal and unexpected and probably not great for the Raptors to give up a couple draft picks. I think all in all, if they extend Ingram, this is a great deal. I think I would give it at that point like an 8 or a 9 out of 10. And if they can't extend him, 0 out of 10. And then the Lakers traded for Mark Williams because the Lakers were desperate for a center after trading Anthony Davis. The Lakers traded Dalton Necht, if that's pronounced wrong, I'm sorry. Cam Reddish, who I didn't even know was still in the league, a 2031 unprotected first round pick, and a 2030 pick swap. Mark Williams, phenomenal player. The problem is he's always hurt. If Mark Williams stays healthy, then this is a really good trade for the Lakers. They got themselves a center. They did overpay for fucking sure, but you know, they underpaid for Luka, so they can probably just get over it. They essentially traded 2 first rounders for Mark Williams and only 1 for Luka Doncic. What? How is this possible? How is this a thing? I don't know, whatever. Nico Harrison, you are a fucking moron. It's just that simple. You're actually stupid. I'm sorry, I don't mean to be mean, but also like you're a fucking moron. But Mark Williams is incredibly talented, great player. I think he's worth the first round pick and the pick swap if he stays healthy. The Lakers are in a desperate situation. LeBron's contract is up at the end of the year. Well, so is Luka's technically, but I'm sure Luka's going to end up re-signing with the Lakers. They're in win now mode. And Mark Williams, does he get them over the top? I don't think so. I honestly don't think so. But you know, they're desperate and they're trying to get there, and that's the direction that they went. So PJ Tucker was back on the Heat for like 5 seconds, but then he got traded alongside a second round pick in cash for Davion Mitchell. I think this is a good trade for the Heat. I was hoping to see another stint at PJ Tucker in Miami. I'm a little upset about that, but good deal for Miami. Davion Mitchell's a good player. I give this a solid 5 out of 10 for both teams. Then the Sixers trade Reggie Jackson and a first rounder to the Wizards. The Wizards doing a great job at this deadline. I think the Wizards did a phenomenal job. The Sixers end up getting Jared Butler alongside 4 second-round picks. I think that's solid for them. It's just a move for the future for both teams. I think it's a completely fine deal. And then the Bucks end up trading Patrick Baldwin and some cash over to the Spurs, and they got nothing in return. That was strictly just to give them an open roster spot and also to just give them some breathing room in the salary cap. The Suns traded Yusuf Nurkic and a 2026 first round pick to the Hornets for Cody Martin, Vasilije Micic, I don't know how to pronounce his first name, and a second round pick. The Suns wanted to get off the Nurkic contract, understandably so. They ended up giving a first rounder to get off of it, which is really bad. But Nurkic kind of sucks. The Hornets take advantage. I like this deal a lot for the Hornets. I think the Suns got suckered by signing Nurkic to an extension, and that's their problem, and sucks for the Suns. And this is the last huge deal that we're going to be talking about, and I think this is going to have a lasting impact in the league. This might be the best trade of the deadline, besides, of course, getting Luka for fucking next to nothing. This is going to be the most underrated, overlooked trade in the entire deadline. The Cavs added DeAndre Hunter in a deal with the Hawks. The Cavs were desperate for a wing, and they added a really good one. And all they had to give away was 3 second-round picks, 2 futures pick swaps, which could be a big deal, I guess, depending on what happens, Karis LeVert, and Georges Niang. I think this is a phenomenal deal for the Cavs, and I think that this just made one of the best teams in the entire NBA way better. They picked up the exact type of piece that they needed, and it is going to be something that people are not going to realize, and DeAndre Hunter is going to help them to get really deep into the playoffs and potentially win the East. I mean, nothing's locked up right now. Obviously, the Celtics are the favorites. DeAndre Hunter, great pickup for them. I love this trade so much for them. It really fills a lot of holes for them, all in one player. So on the one hand, excited to see what this adds to the Cavs. On the other hand, as a Knicks fan, I fucking hate that they got better. But I'm going to go ahead and give this a 16 out of 10 for the Cavs. Then we got the Clippers receiving Bogdan Bogdanovic and 3 future second round picks. The Hawks get Terrence Mann and Bones Highland. I like this trade for both teams. I think it's a solid 5. And then look at this. The Hawks traded Cody Zeller and the second round pick to the Rockets, and they were just trying to free up money for a couple of their other deals, and no big deal. This is a completely irrelevant trade, but that did happen after I believe they just acquired Cody Zeller. The last sort of big players moving deal, it's not like necessarily a big deal in general, but Marcus Smart got traded from the Grizzlies. You know, he went to the Wizards. Now, this is what I'm talking about. The Wizards made some really nice moves, in my opinion. They got Johnny Davis, Colby Jones, Alex Len, Marcus Smart, a first-round pick, and a second-round pick. The Grizzlies end up with Marvin Bagley III, which I don't think that's going to really do anything. 2 future second-rounders. And the Kings end up with Jake LaRavia, I don't know how to pronounce his name either. I think this is a very good deal for the Wizards. They're trying to stock up on some young assets and some picks, and they're also getting a really solid veteran presence who is still pretty good defensively. Marcus Smart is really struggling a lot this year. He's still a smart player. It's the worst pun ever. I think I really like all the Wizards' moves during this deadline. I think they're under the radar. You know, I think these are under the radar good moves that progress their future. and I'm very excited to see what's in store for them in the next couple years. The Clippers trade Kevin Porter Jr. to the Bucks for MarJon Beauchamp. I really don't want to talk too much about it. Kevin Porter Jr. is a piece of shit. Awful human being, at least allegedly. And the final trade that happened at the end of the deadline was maybe the most irrelevant, weakest trade ever, but the Pacers traded James Wiseman and Cash to the Toronto Raptors, and they ended up getting a top 55 protected pick. James Wiseman, complete and utter draft bust. We all know that. He was the second or third pick in the draft, and he ended up not being very good. The Raptors are rebuilding. I guess they wanted to just say, fuck it, I'm going to take a risk and see if we can turn James Wiseman around, even though nobody else in the league has been able to. And that wraps up the entirety of the NBA trade deadline. I know this was a really long video, but I wanted to go over each and every trade from the deadline. I also hadn't anticipated that this video would be this fucking long. I thought it'd be a little quicker to speak, but I am long-winded. And I did want to get my thoughts out about this. If you enjoyed the video, please give it a thumbs up. Please subscribe to the channel. If you've been here for this long, I have to assume that you enjoyed the video enough to maybe check out some of the other videos. You know, we're on the road to 200 subs, and it would help out a lot if you could help us get there. I really appreciate you watching. Have yourself a wonderful rest of your day.